At the most glamorous tennis tournament on the planet, a billionaire just gave a 20-year-old Filipina a luxury car. And when Rafael Nadal saw it, the internet went into a complete meltdown. But here's what no one is telling you. That moment wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. It was the convergence of years of dedication, a mentor's quiet belief, and a visionary worth $192 billion who sees greatness before the rest of the world does. You clicked on this video because of the shocking headline. You're staying because the real story will absolutely blow you away. There are athletes who compete, and then there are athletes who arrive. In early March of 2026, Alexandra Eala walked through the gates of the Indian Wells Tennis Garden, having reached a level no Filipino athlete had ever achieved. She was seeded 32nd in the world with a direct entry in her pocket, the first Filipina in tennis history to be a seeded competitor at a WTA 1000 tournament. Let that sink in for a second. Not a wild card, not a qualifier fighting her way through the opening rounds. A seeded player granted automatic entry into the round of 64 at one of the most prestigious and widely watched tournaments outside of the 4 Grand Slams. She was 20 years old, and California, home to a Filipino population of nearly 2 million, was about to explode. This wasn't just a tournament debut. It was a homecoming for an entire diaspora. All across Southern California, from San Diego to Los Angeles to the Inland Empire, Filipino-American communities rearranged their lives around her matches. Inside Stadium 1, the chanting wasn't a murmur. It was a solid wall of sound. Unapologetic, fierce, and raw every time the bleachers erupted with pride as she walked to the baseline. Before she had even struck a single serve, Eala had already shattered records. She had reached a career-high world ranking of number 31, the highest singles position ever attained by a Filipino player on the WTA Tour. That statistic is just a number, but behind it was a journey that spanned continents and consumed the better part of a decade. At the age of 13, she left Manila for the Rafael Nadal Academy in Mallorca, Spain, a facility carved into the Mediterranean landscape where the world's next tennis champions are not born. They are forged. She spent years grinding on clay courts, rebuilding her forehand, and honing the left-handed game that made her unique, dangerous, and ultimately undeniable. In 2022, she captured the U.S. Open girls singles title. She graduated from the academy in 2023. She turned pro and began her climb, her name echoing in packed stadiums from Dubai and Abu Dhabi to Auckland, Doha, Melbourne, and Manila. By the time she got to Indian Wells, Eala was no longer just a prospect. A few weeks prior, she had defeated a top 10 player, Jasmine Paolini. That was in Dubai. She had also outlasted Dayana Yastremska in a grueling 3-set match that went on for almost 3 hours, winning 7-5, 4-6, 7-5. Mid-tournament, she had climbed to the number 28 spot in the WTA Live World Rankings. She was set to face world number 4, her former doubles partner Coco Gauff, in the round of 32. She didn't just compete. She arrived at Indian Wells as a legitimate, powerful, and undeniable force. And one man in particular, with $192 billion to his name, was paying very close attention. Keep watching, because what happens next doesn't just change this tournament. It changes everything. And it all starts with the man who transformed a dying desert tournament into the crown jewel of world tennis. Most people outside the tennis world have never heard of Larry Ellison, but inside it, he's king. Born in New York City in 1944, he was raised by adoptive parents in Chicago after a difficult childhood, and Ellison would go on to create Oracle. He co-founded the database company from nothing in 1977, naming it after a CIA project he had worked on. Oracle grew, went public, acquired its rivals, and became a tech titan worth hundreds of billions. By early 2026, Forbes estimated Ellison's personal net worth at $192 billion, making him the 6th richest person on the planet. He has 2 great passions, technology and tennis. In 2009, when Indian Wells was struggling and faced a potential sale to investors who wanted to move the tournament to China, Ellison intervened. He bought the Indian Wells Tennis Garden and the BNP Paribas Open for $100 million. Then, he invested another $100 million, completely revolutionizing it. What he created defies the word tournament. He built an entire second stadium with 8,000 seats. He installed Hawkeye electronic line calling on every single match court before any other tournament in the world even considered it. He brought in a Nobu restaurant that only opens for the 2 weeks of the tournament and transformed the grounds into a botanical wonderland. It features 29 hard courts, 21 practice courts, and 10 luxury suites that sell for over $100,000. Its VIP Champions Club is unlike anything else in tennis. Tommy Haas, former world number 2 and the tournament's director, put the transformation simply. It became the Disneyland of tennis, and Haas was not exaggerating. In 2024, Indian Wells attracted 493,440 fans over 2 weeks, a number second only to Wimbledon and the French Open worldwide. It was voted the best tournament on the WTA and ATP tours not just once, but year after year in a row. Even Rafael Nadal once said that the best 2 weeks of the year happen at Indian Wells. Everything that's happening here, how the tournament is growing, its sheer size, all the amenities for the crowd and the players, it's all thanks to Larry. It is wonderful to have Ellison supporting our sport. Coming from Nadal, that praise carries serious weight. He doesn't offer compliments lightly. Ellison makes an annual pilgrimage to Indian Wells, staying for no less than 2 weeks at his adjacent Porcupine Creek estate, a 249-acre property. It's the same piece of land he purchased for $43 million. He's always on site. He watches the matches closely, not as some detached financier, but as a genuine enthusiast moving through the tournament with the fans. And in 2026, something about Alexandra Eala completely captured his attention. He was focused on her in a way no player had commanded in years. He saw her grit, her aggressive left-handed game, and the way Filipino fans turned every section of the stadium into a celebration. He noticed how Eala herself remained composed between points, channeling a quiet intensity that reminded veteran observers of a young champion in the making. Ellison had seen greatness before. This tennis garden had been graced by Serena, Djokovic, Federer, and Swiatek. But something about this 20-year-old from Quezon City in her very first Indian Wells appearance hit differently. He began to make some inquiries. He had made up his mind. And when the moment arrived, absolutely no one on those grounds was remotely prepared for what was about to happen. You have to understand what came next, because it wasn't just a sponsorship announcement. This was no mere press release gesture. It was something the tennis world had genuinely never witnessed on this stage before. Picture the scene, a late afternoon at the Indian Wells Tennis Garden bathed in golden light. The San Jacinto Mountains are glowing amber just behind Stadium 1. The grounds are humming with that unique electric buzz you only feel mid-tournament when the air is thick with the possibility of witnessing history. Eala had just clinched her second-round victory, advancing deeper into a draw packed with the biggest names in women's tennis. Coco Gauff was biding her time. The Filipino sections of the stadium were still ecstatic. Fans wearing Philippine flags like capes were pressed against the railings. Some had driven for hours, others had flown in. Then Eala received a personal invitation. "Come to the Champions Club. Larry Ellison wants to meet you." What happened next was unbelievable. The conversation that unfolded was one Eala would later describe as surreal. A billionaire who runs one of the most powerful tech companies in the world sat across from a 20-year-old tennis player, a Manila-born athlete, and he was asking about her forehand, about the Nadal Academy, about her family, and about the Philippines. He was genuinely curious, completely engaged. Then, in front of staff, a few select guests, and a camera that would change everything, Ellison presented Eala with a gift. He gave her the keys to a luxury car parked just outside, a stunning gesture of recognition from a man who saw this girl carrying the hopes of an entire nation. She had walked into a tournament she'd never played before and performed with extraordinary grace and skill. The reaction in that room was a wave of stunned silence, which was then shattered by an eruption of applause. Eala stared at the keys for a moment, visibly processing it all, before looking up at Ellison with a smile of pure disbelief that no actor could ever fake. Someone filmed it. Someone else posted it within the hour. The clip went viral on every platform simultaneously. Filipino Twitter, now X, went into a frenzy. Hundreds of thousands of shares cascaded through the Filipino diaspora in California, Florida, New York, Texas, Southeast and East Asia, and the Middle East. Hashtag Eala Ellison started trending. It was at the top of lists in several countries before midnight. Global sports commentators completely pivoted their coverage. Anchors on ESPN interrupted their regular segments just to show the video. Veteran international tennis journalists, the ones who cover the major slams and have seen almost everything the sport has to offer, called it unprecedented. This wasn't because high-end gifts are absent in sports, but because of the setting, the timing, the symbolism, and who received it. A 20-year-old female athlete of Asian descent from a country without a major tennis tradition was being given a luxury car by the billionaire owner of the sport's top non-Grand Slam event on the tournament grounds mid-competition as a spontaneous act of admiration. Nothing like this had ever occurred in this way at this place in the entire history of the BNP Paribas Open. The Filipino media went into full-blown escalation. Every major newspaper, every network show, and the Philippine Sports Commission all issued statements. Celebrity accounts shared the video. Musical artists referenced it. Brands concerned about Eala's sudden volcanic profile scrambled to get in touch. But of all the reactions going viral, one in particular brought the entire online conversation to a standstill. Rafa Nadal saw the video. His response wasn't what anyone was imagining. You're likely wrong. In reality, what he did was far more powerful. Nadal's reaction was more impactful than anyone could have predicted, and it hit differently than the gift itself. November 19, 2025 marked 1 year since his final professional match. Rafael Nadal, with 209 weeks at world number 1 and 22 Grand Slam titles, the greatest clay court player ever, was drawn back to a tennis court for the first time since retiring. He didn't do it for a charity exhibition or a broadcast special. At the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, he picked up a racket and hit with Alexandra Eala. Later, she described the moment with barely contained emotion, saying, "For me, it was truly unbelievable." Practicing with Rafa is something that kids and even adults can only dream of. So getting to share a court with him was a real pleasure. He gave me some pointers on my forehand and a couple of other quick tips. That's the first time I've ever hit with him, and it's a memory I'll cherish for the rest of my life. Nadal posted about the session on social media, saying it was amazing to be back on a tennis court after a year away. "It was great practicing with you, Alex. I'll get stronger as time goes on," Issa replied. "Just say you're back like you never left." Months before Indian Wells, the conversation between the legendary retiree and the up-and-coming 20-year-old champion was already warming hearts across the internet. But then the Ellison gift happened, and the full significance of her connection with Nadal suddenly became clear to millions who were just learning her story. Issa's coach Joan Bosch explained how Nadal had first stepped in to mentor her personally at the academy. "First off, it was lucky for Alexandra, and then for us, because it shows you how incredible it is to have someone like that in your corner, and you couldn't ask for anyone better." Bosch recalled Nadal watching her struggle, then grabbing a racket and starting to coach her, not because anyone asked, but just because he wanted to. After he finished, Alex just looked at me and said, "I can't believe this is happening." That's the kind of luck you have when you're at the Rafael Nadal Academy. When Nadal saw the Ellison video, his response was anything but over the top. It wasn't flashy, it carried a special kind of weight, the kind that only comes from genuine emotion. He shared the video and added just one sentence, something that showed he always knew she was destined for greatness. It was a remarkable validation that all her hard work at the academy deserved every bit of recognition the world had to offer. The post was brief, humble, and because it came from Nadal, a man whose entire career was built on letting his actions speak louder than words, it had a more powerful impact than any long statement ever could. Reactions poured in from everywhere. Players, coaches, past champions, and fans who'd followed Nadal for 20 years all weighed in. Tony Nadal, the uncle who shaped Rafael, had already said of her, "If she plays her cards right, she has the potential to become one of the best in the world." Tennis commentator Matt Lander described her with a phrase that went viral itself. "We're talking about Alexandra Eala, a player with hands gifted by God." Now the billionaire owner of Tennis Paradise had just put a luxury car into those God-given hands. And the man who had shaped her game on Mallorcan clay for the hard courts of Indian Wells had just given his silent confirmation, forcefully and definitively, that he had expected this all along. The internet didn't just react, it had a collective realization. The combination of Ellison's gesture and Nadal's endorsement made millions of people simultaneously recognize a truth they hadn't fully articulated before. This kid is no longer a rising star. She has arrived. But here's the part of the story nobody is talking about. Beyond the car, beyond the viral video, beyond Nadal's post, there's a deeper conversation happening about women's tennis, about Asia's place in global sports, and about what Alex Eala's arrival really means. And it's the most important part of the entire story. Alex Eala came to Indian Wells ranked 32nd. She left ranked 28th, still a contender, still a threat, and still carrying the hopes of a nation. Larry Ellison gave her a car. The world gave her a ranking and applause. A man named Rafael Nadal said almost nothing, and in doing so said everything. But the most important part of all of this isn't the car. It's not the viral moment. It's not even Nadal's endorsement. It's that a 20-year-old was driven by all of this.